I bet if you listen to this podcast, you probably are already a professional in the education field, probably corporate education, maybe any other kind of education. But what if you are brand new and want to get into this crazy job field? We're going to talk to somebody who is exploring that and try to answer some of her questions on this episode of The Learning Geeks, starting now.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Hi, boys.
How are you?
The ladies aren't talking right now. I told them going into this, they could either jump in on this or not. But we do just have to say really quick a couple of things. And I do realize that when we do talk about current events, that usually it takes a few weeks for these to get on the air. So it's all old news. But just a couple of things is, first off, I am heading out there, Jake, next week to the land of Pope Leo the 14th. Chicagoland
area.
For my 40th high school reunion.
Nice.
You're that old?
Yep. I am that old. I just got a call. I just got a call yesterday, a voicemail left for me by the woman who I pretend married in fourth grade, and we've had a running joke about being each other's first spouses. That I think it was her husband's idea that we renew our vows next week, and I said we could do that as long as he officiates. So that may happen. Also, Andor has been spectacular. Let's just leave it at that.
Really good writing.
Very good. I know by the time this comes out, by the time this comes out, it'll be way done. But it is fantastic.
This week,
the episodes that we just saw was one of the best TV shows I've ever seen in my
very much
period.
wow
Ever.
episodes.
Period.
Yeah, episodes 7 through 9.
Super good.
Yeah.
Trina and Lauren have been very patient during this bantering.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. They are wonderful, good friends. That's great. Dana, I am going to ask you if you would introduce them and kind of set up what we're going to do today.
I will do that. Well, first of all, welcome to Trina and Lauren. And I'll start with Trina.
Thanks,
and
Tina.
then move on to Lauren. Trina is a fellow Accenture employee. I'm an ex-Accenture employee, but we've known Trina. All of us have known Trina for quite some time, and she's always been a tremendous example and a good leader for us to learn from, and she's always been very supportive, and also loves to jump in on any innovation that when the three of us were working together, Trina was always a big supporter of the innovations that would come out of there. So we're glad to have you on board.
Any chance to work with you guys.
It's way more than that. I mean, Trina, she really, leads the learning ingenuity group at Accenture with me, and she is often the voice of sanity in the craziness that happens. So
We have a mom and dad rapport on
We
a lot
do.
of calls, and sometimes the team is like, I think we're in the middle of a mom and dad conversation.
Or an argument.
we never argue, but sometimes we have different perspectives.
Exactly.
All right, and then
Exactly. But we always come to a good point.
you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we also have Lauren, and Lauren is not an Accenture employee, and she's not a McKinsey employee.
Right.
She's a junior at Brigham Young University, the same place I graduated from. And her dad,
So she is in the mountains
she
of
was,
Utah.
yeah,
She's
she
already in the
is.
mountains of Utah.
She's currently
Yeah.
in Chicago because I know her from
Yeah.
St. Charles.
Yeah, today I'm in Chicago.
So she's there for a break.
Oh,
yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah.
And so Lauren
Layers.
and her family were neighbors of ours. We got to know them quite well through a church connection, and then just they're fun neighbors, fun people to hang out with. And Lauren, as mentioned, is a freshman, and when she mentioned to her dad that she really enjoyed the training field, she said, Dana Koch is a guy you might want to connect with because he's done some stuff in that field. So Lauren and I connected, and I made up some answers to her questions about how do you break into the learning field. And I thought, I should probably.
That was great.
You went to
That's right.
ChatGPT.
That's
And,
right.
yeah.
And I thought, well, it might be benefit to her to get some real answers from the three of you. And also that might be a benefit to other people who are looking to break into the field, whether they're coming out of college or whether they're trying to transfer in from other places like academia, whatever it be. So Lauren, we're glad to have you on the podcast with us. And Trina, we're glad that you're going to be here to answer all of Lauren's questions.
I was going to say, and if you're wondering real quick, where is Dana or why does Dana sound different? He is in a different location. He's not in the mountains of Utah. He is in Idaho. So he's got a different recording setup. And just know that is Dana. His voice sounds slightly different, but
Dana, just keep pulling that tin can a little tighter. Get that string a little tighter, and you'll sound better.
I am in the middle of about 5,000 acres of potato fields, so definitely in Idaho country. So, Lauren, why don't you maybe a little more background on how you got interested, and then start firing questions at us.
Yeah, of course. So as Dana said, I'm a junior in the human resources major at Brigham Young University. And since I've been at BYU, the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to work on BYU's ERP transition team. So we've been transitioning from PeopleSoft to Workday. So I've been on the human capital management team, and I've loved like all the testing and stuff and the architecture in the system. But one of the things I've loved the most has been like the training aspect. And developing curriculum, and I kind of got to jump in with absolutely no experience, but I kind of enjoyed it. Well, I enjoyed it a lot. So that has kind of made me look more into learning and development. So I got connected with Dana, and he got to answer a lot of my questions. But are you guys ready to go, like with the first one?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Yeah, hear it.
All
And
right.
by the way, that's really impressive that you're at school, but
is.
you're getting that hands-on experience. That
Yes.
sounds like an amazing
I
program.
mean, ERP,
very
that's
impressive.
really cool.
Yeah, I've loved it. It's been such a cool opportunity, and I realize I'm so lucky to have that. So
Yeah, that's
So,
really
yeah. So probably a lot of your listeners know this, but I'm definitely going to share this with all the college students, all the people I know. But like, first question, what are the different career paths within the learning and development field? Like, kind of what is learning and development? Let's start with that. And then that, as well as what's different between like internal L&D and then consulting. That's probably a lot of questions at once.
No, but it's a very good foundational question, so I'll jump in at the beginning. And there are different tracks within L&D, and I think the way that companies structure it tends to be around their size and investment in HR and then talent development and learning. And sometimes you will have different tracks that are more in the I am a partner to the business. I'm helping them make their strategic decisions around how are they going to develop talent this year? How are we going to manage our learning and development budget, the investment that they're going to make? So there's more on that like strategic business partner side of the house. There's, of course, then the folks that do all of the taking in the needs analysis, architecting out the programs, doing all the instructional design, content build, putting that curricula together, people that specialize even in assessments within that. So there's different tracks within that, bringing it to life. And then there's a whole arm of the world that is like delivery and administration of learning. And that space is super interesting if you're a really talented facilitator, a coach, someone who's really good at the on-the-ground business and bringing the learning to life in front of the end user, in front of the end learner. And then there's people that do all the data analysis, all of the reporting and tracking. There's different tracks there. Now, like I said, some companies, though, have one person that plays all of those roles, and other companies have, like Accenture, and Jake, I think McKinsey's probably very similar, and a lot of professional services companies are this way, where we have specializations within that, different career levels, and a lot of different tracks. Geeks, what would you add, or what nuance
I'm glad you
to
mentioned that some companies have one person that kind of does it all, because when you get
Does it all.
involved with organizations like ATD or some of the others, you meet people like that. They're, I'd go in and I'd say, well, I get to specialize in learning research. And they go, good for you. I have to do everything from start to finish. And it's a very different thing, right? Because if you can specialize, you can really focus and dig deep. Whereas if you're more of a generalist, you just have to, a lot of hats you've got to balance.
My pathway into corporate learning was, my degree was in computer science with a minor in technical writing. So I started with Accenture writing software documentation. And then it just so happened that the people who wrote the software documentation also wrote the training classes. And then if you wrote the training classes, you had to teach the pilot. And that's how I discovered this was my passion, was from teaching the pilot. So I went in with that delivery angle that that Trina was talking about. I should say, too, that sometimes when you hear training delivery, that at least it does in our field, that encompasses both like the development of the training content as well as the facilitation of it and making it run and all of that kind of stuff. But I started on that facilitation and making it run. And for me, that was a really good entryway in there, because it's kind of like you're starting with the rubber on the road. You know, at the moment where you're really interacting with the students, you're able to see how do they learn, what works, what doesn't work, that type of stuff. From there, I expanded out to more development of content and then more of the admin type stuff that Trina has talked about as well. So I love the idea of starting in that route. The only problem is, you know, back when I started, the only type of learning that we had was either stand-up training or reading it out of a book, essentially. You know, it wasn't until 5 years after that that I met Dana for the first time in St. Charles, and he spent a week teaching me how to do computer-based training. And then we were friends forever after that. So, you know, things have evolved. Like, I wouldn't necessarily look for a role where all you're doing is stand-up training or facilitation or something like that, because that's less and less prevalent right now. But it is sure nice if you can do something where, at least to get started, you are really working as close to the learner as you can. I think that's what helps you build those muscles that you can take into these other areas.
Mm-hmm. I don't have much to add. I mean, I can go more in depth, but maybe we'll go to the next question, because I think that was a great coverage of all of them.
Yeah, so
that's Jake's way of saying you talk too much, but keep going.
No, that's not.
Well,
I just did.
Yeah,
I want to make sure we get to all the questions.
Yeah, Bob already kind of answered my next question, which was, how can someone get started in a career? So kind of how can you enter from undergrad? And is that traditional, or is it more traditional that you kind of start out in something else? Just how can somebody get started in L&D?
I mean, I could take that one. I think there's multiple paths. I think that pass question allows you to get into it. I mean, very similar to all the other ones. I think that if you want to, I would choose, do you want to be more of a development side? Are you really into kind of the tech? Are you really into data and analytics and you want to do like learning measurement? If you want to like be a more human-centered designer, there's a lot of stuff there. So it really is just a matter of building a network. This is probably more general advice than any other job and profession, is building a network like what you're starting to do now, and then seeing where can I possibly find some opportunities to get in and build that network pretty early. And I think I know all of us, we've really focused on building an external network and finding opportunities there. And then we've been able to connect people. Even if we're not the ones trying to look for something, we often can find, there's an opportunity that we know of over here that might be really great for you because this is your interest area. And so I would say definitely the network side. And then you can find that path that you're looking for. And I would say lastly, before I finish, and I probably am talking now more too now, Bob. But
you're not. You're doing good.
No, I would say go into the learning development field if you want to go in one area, but know that there's so many different spaces and you don't have to worry about picking one, because you'll find that there's so many different spots that you can end up being 3 years later, 3 years after that. That's what's one of the nice thing about this space.
And I think you asked that first question was kind of a compound one, right? You can always get into an area like consulting, or even getting an internship in somewhere, or starting in a space that's maybe not directly L&D, but then sort of being in, I guess is the term, intrapreneur within your organization. Build your network and see if there's a need within your department to build some learning and development, to build skills, or there's a performance gap somewhere, and help. And you can do that internally, even if you can't get into L&D right away. There is a way to capture that need and to show that you can build these skills and then transfer them in. And eventually, when you can build that network within L&D and a role opens up or an opportunity presents itself for you to do even more training and development, that's something that you're good at. And if folks are looking at like, well, what consulting field could you start in that's even like adjacent? I would say looking at change management or any sort of human capital consulting. I started out in health IT consulting at my first job, and I didn't know it was called change management, but I was like, I like the people side of projects, like people projects. And that's how I came to find change management, and then eventually L&D specifically, with an interlude in teaching in there as well.
Okay, so follow-up question to that then. How do you recommend people find internships? I love how Trina mentioned like change management. So how can college students or people close to graduation, how can they find internships that would help them go into this? Do you have any recommendations?
I would say outside of just networking, it might even be worth going to a few conferences that don't even have to be in person. They can also be like virtual based. But I have seen that in the past where people have come and they have been maybe in the academia world and they're looking at transitioning more into the corporate L&D space. And they're just joining the conference to get a sense of what people are thinking, what are the perspectives. And then those are also great opportunities to talk with people, learn from them, and then really just be straightforward. Like, I'm exploring this space. These are some of my interest areas. And then start talking to people after. I mean, I do talk with a lot of people, honestly, I would say randomly, that they'll reach out. They'd love to learn more about the L&D space. And we chat and then kind of guide them in certain ways. And then sometimes if there's opportunities one way, then I provide that link. It doesn't mean it always happens, but I think, again, the conference route might be
and
one other option.
sometimes conferences are looking for student volunteers. I know I did that one.
Yeah.
I did that at an
That's
HED
true.
conference when I was at BYU there. And I helped people find rooms and other things, but then I could listen in on different sessions and I could mingle with people during lunch and other times.
And a specific slant on the networking thing, Lauren, who are all the BYU alums that are, a couple years into their career that might have a really good perspective on that campus transition into corporate and what that's like. And most people are game to talk about themselves. And if they can find where that internship program or the HR analyst program is, they'll probably refer you after a couple conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. That's super helpful. And I think sometimes I do, and I know a lot of my peers do, feel bad about asking for help. But I think if you go about it in the right way, like I've seen, like Dana has been so helpful. So I appreciate that. Okay, so my next question, I have asked so many people about this and heard so many different things. But what are your guys' thoughts on grad school? What do you think is like a good timeline for that? Good like programs? I know there's not like one right answer for this, but what are your guys' opinions?
I've got a big opinion about this.
Let's hear it.
Number one, you can be super successful in this industry without going to grad school, without an advanced degree, because that's me. I only have a bachelor's in computer science. And so you can be successful. You can learn what you need to learn, on the job through your experience, and be successful. That said, in hindsight, as I'm starting to zero in on the end of a career, I wish that I had gone to grad school. I wish that I had a little bit more formal education in adult learning, and because frankly, I have imposter syndrome almost every day. And I am like, wow, do I really know what I'm talking about? Like, I don't have the credential to do it. I thank you, Trina. I feel like I do, but still, I just feel like I would be more comfortable and more confident had I gotten an advanced education. But y'all, the rest of you have advanced degrees, right? You do too, Jake, right?
I do, yeah. I made the choice to go right into my master's degree.
You went right in, yeah.
Right in. And I didn't, I finished, so I went 1 year full, and then I went into I went and got a job while finishing it part-time. But yeah, I made that decision right away. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know if you necessarily have to do it right away. I do think having an advanced degree in this space is more and more common, as well as more and more requested, I've noticed by others. I'm even seeing more, I don't think this is actually needed, but I'm also seeing people that are even doctorate's degree, depending on if they're focused on cognitive science or something specific. I'm seeing that more often. So, I mean, I'm always going to be the one that any type of education in any type of way, whether or not it's formal or informal or on the job, is all great. I mean, that's why we're in this field. But I mean, I personally, the reason I did it first was because I wanted to do it eventually. I was just like, I'm just going to do it now. that was my choice.
And I don't know where you were at in your career, Dana, when you grabbed yours, but I was 28. So Lauren, I had started working in health IT consulting. Then I took 2 years and was a teacher. I taught 8th grade science. And it was in that stint as a teacher where I was like, I know I want to go back to corporate. I found out the thing was called change management, the people side of projects.
Yeah.
But I knew I really liked learning. And so I started an online master's in learning design and technology from Purdue. And I did it at the same time as I finished teaching, started Accenture, and traveled every single week on my change management projects. I do not recommend doing that. It was unbelievably intense, and I got very, very ill after I finished my master's degree because my body just was like, no more. It's over. You're sleeping now. But I'm so glad I did it. It did really give me a lot of great foundation, a lot of confidence going into my consulting projects. Like I knew what I was talking about and I had data and research to back it up. And then also it helped accelerate my career very quickly. I had an opportunity to lead a team and I was young, like 31. And I think that putting that little bullet below my name helped justify a 31-year-old getting like elevated quickly. I do think that it helped make me move up quickly and gave me that confidence.
That's pretty good because you're only 32 right now. So
I'm barely over 32. That's right, Bob. Right.
Well, just one little thing. One of the reasons why I didn't ever go back and get one is because as I was growing up through Accenture, you really didn't need one. Like it didn't. There was no career bump. There was no pay bump or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put myself in the situation that Trina did of, like being completely overwhelmed.
Great. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all your answers. And I'm definitely thinking about grad school, but we'll see when I get around to it. But my next question, kind of different. So if you guys are in your careers, or I guess Dana, you're retired.
Totally.
But still doing stuff. Still busy. Yeah.
Totally.
All that to say.
Totally retired. Over a year now.
Yeah.
Nice.
So who's counting?
So my question is, what are some ways to stay current with trends and innovations in L&D? I know we talk about AI at my business school like all the time. I know like a lot is changing with this. How can you stay on top of it? How can you be aware, especially if you haven't maybe been in this field too long?
Listen to the Learning Geeks podcast.
Yeah, other than that, I did have that in parentheses.
We all wanted to say it. Dana,
I did too. Yeah. I mean, but to the podcast point, I think, listening to different podcasts, reading. I mean, really, it's just forcing yourself to read. And what I would recommend is when you explore and read, look at cross industries. Don't look just at the L&D or technology space. Technology does often drive the way that people invest, and companies want to change, and that then impacts skills and impacts the way that they want to develop their people. But look in a cross-industry lens, because then you start to see what are those signals that then allow us, like what could be on the horizon that I either need to personally start to develop in, maybe there's some certain skills I need to develop in, or it helps you generate new ideas that you think, hey, we haven't done this. Maybe I saw a little bit here, I saw a little bit there, maybe we can combine that and we can create something kind of cool. But that's how I always push. I always push like just explore many, many different areas.
Yeah. Just two other pro tips is there are other organizations that will do that and can help you with that. ATD,
Yes.
Brandon Hall provides that service. Josh Burrs and Company. I'll give those guys some free plugs. Like, they keep a hold on what's going on in the industry and can.
Red
can
Thread is another one. Red Thread.
Yeah.
That was a great one.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a Google alert out on the terms corporate learning and corporate training. And I find that about 80% of what hits on that are just press releases. So I just delete right away. But occasionally it'll get some good stuff. The other thing that you asking this question made me think I have to go back to this is when, it feels like a decade ago, but it was probably about a year ago, like you first had the ability to create your own custom GPTs in ChatGPT. I tried setting one up that would, kind of survey the web on the latest news in corporate learning and pull together a summary for me every week. And it was super amazing at completely faking articles. I would get this incredible digest, and then I would click on any of the links and they would go to nothing. They would go to 404 errors. So now that world is better, and you can get like, Google with deep research, Google Gemini with deep research, or ChatGPT Pro, or things like that. I want to go back and kind of fine tune that, because I think you can create an agent, you can create a GPT that will help you keep track of things.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So this question might be more for Dana, because I just don't know a ton about the rest of your backgrounds. But what's the best way to gain practical experience and learning and studying strategies?
In learning and studying strategies. So actually,
Yes.
Bob and actually all four of us know quite a bit about it, because Bob and I in particular built these things called brain hacks, which you can find by Google searching Accenture brain hacks. And if you do that, there's all kinds of tips about tips and techniques that you can apply as you're trying to study and learn better. So that's what, and then there's also several interesting books. There's one called Brain Rules by John Medina that gives all kinds of insight as far as how your brain works. And if you understand how your brain works, you can apply those to learning and study techniques.
One other resource, Andrew Huberman is a very popular podcaster. He's a neuroscientist, and he's done a couple on learning strategies and study strategies that are just excellent. We discovered those. I was super happy that it aligned with what we said in Brain Hacks and our durable learning principles and all of that kind of stuff. But I passed that on to my hopefully someday daughter-in-law who's in med school. And I think she's really benefited for some of those. So another good place to look. And I'm sure Huberman's not the only one. There's a lot.
The one thing that a lot of people don't think about as we were doing our research internally was when you're trying to learn and figure out how to study best, a lot of people don't pay attention to the nutrition end of things. Right? They don't think about sleep, and they don't think about food, and they don't think about exercise, and they don't think about managing stress. It turns out all of those things, we ended up calling them learning accelerators in the model we put together, because they really do impact the way your brain functions and your ability to retain what you've learned. So that's, and John Medina goes through some of those things in his book.
Great. Yeah. So I realized I probably should have asked the question I'm going to ask next before this one, because I was kind of wondering about the learning and studying strategies, because just in my work experience and on my mission I served for my church, I had some training opportunities. And sometimes, especially if you aren't trained well in training, you just kind of stand up and talk in front of everyone, kind of like we discussed earlier. So as a facilitator of learning, how can you help the people that you're helping facilitate learn? How can you help them use these learning and study strategies? I should have asked this question first, but how can you do that to make it more engaging and help people take what they learn too and not have it end when they leave the session?
Oh boy. I'll jump in first. There are so many different strategies, and like the models that Dana in particular has worked on at Accenture have really done a lot to outline how to design the program well, how to space things out, how to add in reflective moments, how to use those brain hacks and best practices for learning to stick in the design of it. But when you actually get to the facilitation, one of the things we invest time in is the faculty prep, getting to them early. It's even better if they can be the subject matter expert that helps you craft and develop all of the content, but sometimes it's not. But getting your facilitators to sit, prep, focus on it, and really getting them to understand the power of those pauses, reflective moments, activities, and that there is a natural inclination to lecture. But that, and especially when you're short on time, they'll want to skip some of the activities. We see this often. Skip the activities and go back into talking, and really working with them on the power and the purpose of those activities and what it can do for learning. And then getting learner feedback regularly in there as well. One great thing about AI is you can collect a tremendous amount of feedback and get a summary to your facilitators that day or after that lesson. And it will summarize for them if it was boring or dull, or people were low energy. And then reminding them, we built in these activities for a reason, to help bring the energy back up and get people to reflect on their learning and be more participative versus passive. So there are a number of things you could do, and Gen AI has absolutely helped with that. Virtually, in person, doesn't matter, to get those facilitators really trying to be much more active with the learners versus passive.
I was just going to say one thing, just to kind of add to what Trina was saying, is one of the things that our research bore out was that about every 20 minutes you need to change things up. TED Talks are 17 minutes for a reason, is because that's about the length of time that our brain can stay engaged with one thing. This is one key, and if you figure out what does changing it up mean, you can really impact the design. And if the facilitators know that, then they pay attention to it, and the class kind of gets the resets that they need.
My favorite one, the one that I always really lean heavily on, is the term relevancy. And to me, if without something being relevant, it's really hard for it to be engaging. You can make it incredibly fun. You can make it incredibly, have all the bells and whistles you want. But if that individual does not understand the meaning or connection to them personally, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And so as a facilitator, I think it's really important to spend some time up front for reflection, for people to understand and discover that, and to figure out, what does this mean to me? What could if I do this, if I spend my energy, cognitive energy on this specific thing, what's going to be the potential value of it? And I think having that upfront reflection, whether or not you're either in the session or even before, think of it like you're promoting this as an option. If someone figures that out, that's when you have a better chance or higher chance of getting them to sustain that, or have engagement and then sustain it as they go.
And Jake, to layer on to that, knowing your learners is another highly valuable way in order to bring that relevancy in. And giving the facilitators an opportunity to know who their audience is really important, because otherwise you might have a really mixed group with different proficiency levels coming into the room and different backgrounds, and having them get a chance to spend some time getting to know their learners, then they can actually help pull out some relevancy in specific contexts for folks.
I think the net of this is the place to kind of build in the best learning tips is in the design of the program, and probably less in the delivery of it. It's hard to be stand up in front of some people and be on a bully pulpit and say, you should be getting 8 hours of sleep tonight. You can do those things, and we have done those things, but it's more in the design of it. And Jake and I can arm wrestle later over whether relevance or engaging is the superior durable learning attribute.
Well, I still believe it. I definitely believe in it, but I think you need to have it relevancy for your brain to kick in to make it truly, truly engaging for that person. But we can have an arm wrestle. Let's do it.
We could do a whole podcast.
We could do a whole show on this. But let's not do it now. Let's let Lauren ask another question or two.
Yeah, well, I love your guys' answers, especially because that like relevancy aspect was something that I wanted to ask about, and I was like, I'm not sure this is super relevant to college students, but I think if we're going into an entry level field, you know, sometimes we'll be designing things, delivering things to people who have been in their careers for a very long time. And so and I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day, and you were talking about storytelling. And I think I have a tendency to be like, okay, this change that we're implementing is going to be really good for this group because of this. But that's what I think, and I need them to understand what's in it for them, and that might be different than what I want it to be. So all that's to say, how, as an entry-level person, you know, you're younger than everyone in a company, how can you help employees understand the training and what's in it for them, and use storytelling to effectively communicate that?
I'll go first real quick. Would be spend some time interviewing, talking with people, get a sense of their context. What do they deal with? What are their pain points? What are their everyday situations like? The more and more you know that, the storytelling comes with it. So if you can make that storytelling relate to their own situations and context, that's when it feels more real, and they can take whatever you're trying to teach them and apply it. So yeah, it's just get to know people, either through empathy-based interviews or through any types of data gathering that you can. You don't have to talk with them, because talking with people takes a long time. But anything you can do to really understand what people go through, it's going to be extremely helpful.
And Lauren, you don't need to be the storyteller. You can maybe capture videos of other people telling the stories.
Yeah.
And that's another way to break things up, right?
That's a great
because
point.
If you're lecturing for a little bit, break it up with a story, and then ask them, what stories do you have that shows how these things are relevant? So then you act as more of a facilitator rather than someone who's the expert.
Yeah, it's true. And you can be the storyteller. You can say, I was talking to somebody and this is their experience. This is the story that they told me. And that still kicks the audience into, oh, there's a story going on. You know, it's the squirrel aspect, because humans just love stories. So you can do it that way. But Dana raises the awesome point that there's all sorts of different ways that you can get those stories out there. And until you can build up your own cadre of personal stories, other people's stories, fair game, legitimate, absolutely appropriate.
Okay, one last question, Lauren.
All right. So my last question for myself as a college student and for other college students is, how can we find companies that value this learning and development? And if we find ourselves in a company that doesn't, what can we do about that?
Yeah, so I think sometimes it's hard to tell. Certain industries, like we're in professional services companies, they do tend to invest in L&D and make it a priority. So there's some things where it's the nature of the business, but other times it's through your network. As we've mentioned, it's talking to people either in L&D or even just at a company, asking them about their experience with skill building, on the job, formal corporate training, and get a sense from people what that culture is like. That's, to me, one of the best ways to find out. And if you're in a position where you're at a company that doesn't necessarily value it, that's one of those well, what can I do? What's in my control? And looking around your department, your team, and finding opportunities. Start brown bag lunch sessions where you guys do different topics, where you share different things you know about. See there's a performance gap somewhere, and think about what sort of enablement or communications or awareness building or what sort of incentive structures do we need to look at here, and be your own little performance consultant within your department. That adds tons of value and gives you some good experience for your resume as you look at maybe some some adjacent skills to put towards an L&D application. I don't know, geeks, what do you guys think?
I think you're right there, Trina, about creating a business case. So if you're in a company that doesn't really value learning, you should do what we should all be doing as learning professionals in the first place, and realizing we don't just do training for training's sake. We do it because we're trying to get to business results. So look for something where you see a clear performance gap and think of, how could I fix that? And then, then you can start going to a CFO or a CEO even and saying, hey, our people are spending this much time doing this activity. If we shorten that by 15 minutes, like it's going to add this much money to our bottom line. And here's how much it would cost to do like a quick training that would address that. And, they'll see that margin and they'll be like, yeah, go for it. So, making sure that you're focusing on what are the performance changes that I'm trying to make and how are those going to add value to the company? It's pretty hard to say no to that if you are a leader, even if you don't really love the idea of training.
I'll be really quick with mine. I mean, Trina hit on this, but I always recommend you looking at organizations who their product is actually the people. So because again, if people is the product, so professional service companies and so forth, they're going to want to train them. Like, they have to make them better. And so if you're looking for anybody, look for that. Like if the people is the product, there's a high chance that there's going to be a strong L&D component to it.
I was going to say that if a company has a corporate university or dedicated training space, then they invest in training. Yeah,
There's
the other
strong
thing I would
investments.
look to do
Chief
is
learning
you can look at
officer.
some
Yeah.
you can look
A
at some
chief learning,
annual
yeah.
reports, and you can see what sometimes it tells you how much they're investing in training. Right? They'll be bragging. They'll say,
That's a good one.
we've trained
cool.
X amount of people and
Yep.
built X amount of skills. So I'd say those are two ways you could identify companies that actually do it.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. Lauren, I hope that was helpful to you. I hope it was helpful to all of your classmates who you're going to say, hey, listen to this episode of Learning Geeks podcast that I starred on, or anybody else who's thinking about exploring the field. So thank you so much for being here. It was great to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for answering all my questions. And it was so cool to hear your guys' answers and to be like, oh, the things we learn in class all year, they're real things. My teachers didn't make them up. so thank you guys so much.
Happy
That's
to help,
always
Lauren.
great. And Trina, of course, thank you for being here. I'm
Yes,
really glad
thank
that we don't have to have any mom and dad discussions after
We don't.
this.
We don't.
We were completely aligned. Yeah.
It was good to hang out with my friends for a while.
It sure was.
It was.
Great to have you. So, Jake and Dana, as always, glad you're here and for everything that you contributed. To the rest of our listeners, thank you for being here. And make sure you come back for the next episode of Learning Geeks coming up real soon.